People and opportunities seem to come close, but never fully enter your life. Perhaps the issue isn't external. It may lie deep within you. Carl Jung once said, "The more you value yourself, the more the world will value what you receive." That's where the journey begins, rediscovering inner worth. Have you ever felt like the people and opportunities entering your life are almost right, but never quite align with who you are or what you truly desire? It's as if you're always standing at the threshold of something better, yet it never fully arrives. This frustrating pattern can make you question your choices, your environment, or even your luck. But what if the issue isn't out there in the world, but rooted deep within you? Carl Jung offers us a profound insight into this experience. He said, "The more you value yourself, the more the world will value what you receive." This quote is not just poetic, it's deeply psychological and energetic. When we don't recognize our inner worth, we unconsciously emit a signal, a vibration that says, "I am not enough." This invisible message attracts situations and relationships that reflect that belief, people who undervalue you, opportunities that fall through, or patterns of being overlooked and underestimated. They all mirror how you see yourself on a deeper level. In Jungian psychology, this idea ties into the concept of the shadow self, the parts of us that remain hidden, repressed, or unacknowledged. If, for example, you carry unprocessed feelings of unworthiness from childhood moments when you weren't chosen, appreciated, or seen, these feelings can silently shape your present. You may find yourself repeatedly drawn to people who ignore you, reject you, or make you prove your value not because you deserve it, but because part of you believes that's all you're worth. These cycles are not conscious. They're not choices we make intentionally. They're the result of deeply embedded beliefs that live in the unconscious mind, according to Jung. Until you bring these unconscious patterns to the surface, they will continue to shape your life. And you'll call it fate. That's why the journey must begin within. When you start to reconnect with your true self-worth, your inner compass begins to shift. You no longer chase validation or settle for less than you deserve. You stop entertaining people who only bring confusion, chaos, or inconsistency into your life. Instead, you begin to attract people who mirror your healed energy. People who recognize your value without you having to convince them. The world around you becomes a reflection of your internal transformation. As your sense of worth rises, your relationships evolve, your boundaries become clear, and your standards naturally elevate. You stop hoping for change and become the change, and the world responds. So if the wrong people keep entering your life, it's not a sign of failure, it's an invitation to pause, look within, and ask, what part of me still believes I'm not worthy of better? From that place of awareness, healing can begin, and with it, a new story can be written, one in which you don't wait at the door of opportunity, but walk confidently through it. Transformation begins when you realize the way you treat yourself determines how life treats you. Value is not a reward, it's an inner axis around which your reality spins. Jung reminds us, he who looks outside dreams, he who looks inside awakes. True value comes from within. Transformation doesn't begin with changing your job, your relationship, or your environment. It begins in the quietest of places within your own mind. Specifically, it begins with how you treat yourself. One of the most overlooked truths in human experience is this: the way you treat yourself teaches the world how to treat you. If you constantly speak to yourself with judgment, if you neglect your needs, suppress your voice, and downplay your emotions, life mirrors that back to you. You find yourself in relationships where your boundaries are ignored, in situations where your efforts go unnoticed, and in patterns where you're expected to give endlessly without receiving much in return. This is not punishment, this is resonance. Carl Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakes." In other words, while many seek change through external means, chasing recognition, love, or validation. The true awakening occurs when we look inward, when we examine the relationship we have with ourselves. Self-worth is not a reward you earn by achieving or pleasing others. It is a core inner axis, a spiritual center around which your entire life spins. When you know your worth, you stop begging for crumbs, you stop tolerating half-hearted love, you stop shrinking yourself to fit in places you've outgrown. Life doesn't randomly hand us experiences. According to Jungian thought, it responds to our inner state, particularly our unconscious beliefs. If you believe deep down that you're not good enough, life will echo that belief in your reality. You might get passed over for opportunities. You may feel invisible in conversations. You might keep encountering people who reflect your own self-doubt. But the moment you begin to treat yourself like you matter, everything changes. You speak to yourself with more compassion. You say no when something doesn't feel right. You pause before overgiving. You give yourself rest, care, forgiveness, the very things you used to wait for someone else to offer you. And what happens next? Your energy changes. You no longer chase people or places that diminish you. You attract people who meet you at your level of respect. Opportunities arise not because you force them, but because you now embody the worthiness that calls them. This is the inner revolution Jung points toward. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget your value. So ask yourself, if I truly believed in my worth, how would my life look different? What would I stop accepting, and what would I start creating? Self-worth is not a feeling, it's a frequency, and when you raise it, life responds in kind. That's not magic, it's alignment. From childhood, we're taught to be good, successful, acceptable. We learn to fit in and forget who we are. The inner child believed he was lovable simply because he existed. Then the world said, be better, and the masks began. Jung called this mask the persona. From the moment we step into the world, we are met with expectations, spoken and unspoken. As children, we were not just seen. We were shaped. We learned that approval is given, not inherent, that love is earned through good behavior, good grades, or pleasing others, and slowly, without even realizing it, we traded authenticity for acceptance. The inner child, in his purest form, believed something simple and sacred. I am lovable because I exist. He didn't need to prove his worth. He didn't think he had to be perfect, smart, attractive, or productive to deserve love. His worth was intrinsic, untouched by comparison or performance. But then the world intervened with every frown of disappointment, every comparison to someone better, every unspoken suggestion that we should be more. Something shifted. We stopped showing who we were and started performing who we thought the world wanted us to be. Carl Jung called this performance. The persona, a psychological mask we wear to meet social expectations and gain approval. And make no mistake, the mask is not evil. It begins as protection. It helps us navigate family dynamics, school, society. It says, if I act this way, maybe I'll be safe, maybe I'll be accepted. But over time, something tragic happens. We forget we're wearing the mask. We mistake the role for our identity. We become the successful one, the strong one, the agreeable one, the one who never complains, who always helps, who never asks for much. And beneath that mask, a silenced self, a suppressed voice, a soul that whispers, this isn't all of me. The trap of external approval is that it's never enough. No matter how much validation we receive, if it doesn't reach our inner child, the wound remains open. We keep chasing more praise, more likes, more love, but still feel empty because the part of us that needs to be seen isn't the one we're showing. So how do we find our way back? We begin by acknowledging the mask. We ask, what part of me have I been hiding to fit in? What truth have I silenced in order to be accepted? The path home is not paved with external approval, it's paved with radical self-honesty. It's about peeling away the persona, layer by layer, and meeting the parts of ourselves we left behind. This isn't easy. It takes courage to stop being the version of yourself that pleases everyone and start being the version that feels like you, but the reward is freedom, freedom from performing, freedom from chasing validation, freedom to show up whole, honest, and deeply human. As Jung taught, individuation, the process of becoming your true self, begins when you stop living for others' expectations and start listening to your own inner truth. So ask yourself, who am I beneath the persona? What would it feel like to be loved, not for what I do, but for who I truly am? The journey back home doesn't require perfection. It only asks for presence and the courage to meet yourself where you are. Persona and shadow, two sides of the same soul. The longer we wear the mask, the more we forget our true face. But Jung reminded us, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. The shadow is all we've rejected in ourselves, our anger, fears, passions, even power. We all wear a mask. Some of us wear many: the smiling face at work, the agreeable friend, the high-functioning achiever. Each one carefully crafted to fit expectations, to be accepted, to stay safe. Carl Jung called this outer identity the persona, the version of ourselves we present to the world. It is not false, but it is partial, a fragment of who we are, polished and rehearsed. It allows us to move through society, to navigate relationships, to feel in control. But here's the truth. The longer we wear the mask, the more we begin to confuse it with who we really are. We forget the raw, unfiltered self underneath, the soul behind the performance. And what happens to the parts of us that don't fit the mask? The anger we're told is unacceptable, the jealousy we're ashamed of, the sadness we were taught to hide, the boldness we were punished for, the desires we were told to fear. We push them down, we exile them to the basement of the psyche. This is the shadow, the container of all that we've rejected, denied, or disowned within ourselves. But the shadow doesn't disappear just because we ignore it. It whispers in our choices. It leaks out in irritation, in envy, in self-sabotage. It appears in our judgments of others, reflecting back the parts of ourselves we refuse to face. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. To truly grow, we must face the mirror within, we must walk into the basement, we must sit with the feelings we were taught to fear, because paradoxically, inside the shadow lies our greatest power. The anger we suppress may be a call for justice, the envy we feel may reveal a buried longing, the shame we carry may hide our most tender truths. Integration begins not by becoming perfect, but by becoming whole. To embrace both mask and mystery, to see that the persona is not the enemy. It is a tool, but it is not the self. To understand that the shadow is not evil, it is unclaimed light, misunderstood power. The persona and the shadow are not enemies. They are two sides of the same soul, and the path of individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are, is about bringing them into dialogue, not to destroy one or glorify the other, but to unite them, to be a person who owns both their light and their darkness, their joy and their rage, their wisdom and their wounds, because that's what it means to be human. You are not here to wear a perfect mask. You are here to be real, to be seen, to be whole. Your energy is your compass. The world responds not to your words, but to your energy. If you feel unworthy, you'll attract what confirms that belief. Energy that carries lack will invite lack, but when you value yourself, your energy invites Not just love, but conscious love. The world listens to your energy more than it listens to your words. You might say, I am fine, but if your energy whispers, I am not enough, the world hears that whisper. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious speaks through patterns, and energy is the silent architect of those patterns. Your beliefs, even the ones you're not aware of, radiate outward like a signal shaping your relationships, your decisions, even your luck. This is why you can't fake self-worth, because your energy will always tell the truth if deep inside you believe you're unworthy of love. You'll find yourself surrounded by people who confirm it, not because they are cruel, but because your vibration silently invited them. Energy rooted in lack doesn't attract abundance, it attracts mirrors of that same lack. But the opposite is also true. When you begin to genuinely value yourself, your energy shifts, not in a loud or boastful way, but in a calm, grounded, magnetic way. You stop chasing and start choosing. You stop begging to be seen and become visible by simply being real. That shift is subtle yet profound. Suddenly, people respect your time. Opportunities seem to find you. You're no longer in rooms that drain you. You're in places that nourish you, not because the world changed, but because your signal changed. When you begin to love yourself, your energy stops calling in just any kind of love. It begins to call in conscious love, love that honors your truth, love that sees you fully, love that doesn't demand that you shrink to be accepted. This is not magic. This is alignment. You don't get what you want, you get what you are. You attract what your nervous system believes is familiar. So if you've grown up with patterns of being overlooked or undervalued, you may unknowingly seek them out, not because they feel good, but because they feel normal. To change your outer life, you must first change your inner energy. That's why healing isn't just emotional, it's energetic. When you feel worthy, you don't need to force anything. Your boundaries are clearer, your standards are higher, and your energy becomes a compass, not a plea for attention, but a quiet declaration. This is who I am, this is what I welcome. As Carl Jung reminds us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So ask yourself, what is my energy calling in? Is it reflecting my fears or my healing? Is it rooted in survival or in self-worth? You are always transmitting something. When you begin to value yourself truly and deeply, your energy becomes your greatest ally, and the world begins to respond not to your appearance, your sum, or your charm, but to the unshakable frequency of someone who knows their own worth. Individuation, the journey to the true self. Jung called the journey home to oneself individuation. It is the breaking away from illusions and societal roles. It is a spiritual revolution. You lose old identities, but gain a quiet, grounded I am. It begins with fear, but ends in freedom. Carl Jung called it individuation, the sacred journey back to the self, not the self others see, not the self that pleases, but the quiet, unshakable self that simply is. It is not a path of becoming someone. It is the path of remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Individuation begins as a disturbance, a discomfort in the soul. You wake up one day and realize the roles you've played no longer fit. The mask you wear feels heavy, the dreams you chase don't belong to you, and so begins the unraveling. You start peeling back the layers, the good girl, the strong man, the perfect partner, the ideal child. You begin questioning, who am I beneath the approval? Who am I without the applause? It's not an easy journey. In fact, it often begins in darkness, in loss, heartbreak, confusion, or exhaustion, because before you can find your truth, you must unlearn the false. Jung believed that individuation is a kind of spiritual revolution, a silent rebellion against inherited scripts, collective expectations. and unconscious patterns, and like all revolutions, it costs you something. You lose comfort, you lose certainty, you might even lose people who only knew the version of you that existed to please them, but in return, you gain something. Priceless, the quiet, rooted awareness of I am, no performance, no pretending, just presence. You begin to live not for validation, but from alignment. Your choices no longer come from fear, but from integrity. Your yes means something, and your no longer needs explanation. This is what Jung meant when he said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Individuation is the death of illusion and the birth of essence. It's a process that requires solitude, courage, and deep listening. You must face your shadow. You must mourn your masks, and you must trust that your true self, though buried, is still alive, still waiting, and when you find it, you no longer ask the world, who should I be? Instead, you ask your soul what feels true, and that truth, it may be quieter than you expected, less glamorous, less impressive, but it's real, and in that realness, there is freedom, true freedom, not the kind that comes from rebellion, but the kind that comes from reunion, a return to your essence, a return to your center, a return home. Acceptance over perfection. To value yourself isn't to be perfect, it is to be whole. It is to accept your flaws, fears, and wounds, not despite them, but through them. Courage lies not in shining, but in standing in your own truth. Shadow and all, to truly value yourself is not to chase perfection, but to choose wholeness. Wholeness is not flawless. It's not always graceful or beautiful. It is raw. It is honest. It is the quiet strength of a person who has stood face to face with their own shadow and chosen not to run. We are taught to polish ourselves, to hide the cracks, to apologize for our scars. But what if your scars are not signs of weakness, but symbols of survival? You don't become worthy by erasing what hurts. You become worthy when you learn to hold it gently, without judgment. When you whisper to your wounded parts, you belong here too. Perfection demands performance. Acceptance invites peace. It takes far more courage to stand in your truth messy, unsure, and vulnerable than to pretend you have it all together. Carl Jung believed that true growth comes from integration, not from idealization. To integrate the whole self means embracing not just your light, but the parts you've hidden. Your insecurities, your rage, your doubt, your loneliness. Because until you accept them, they will control you from the shadows. But once accepted, they become part of your power. This is the heart of self-worth, not becoming more, but reclaiming what you've abandoned in yourself, not proving your value to the world, but remembering it without conditions. You do not need to be perfect to be lovable. You do not need to be fixed to be enough. You do not need to earn your place in the world by becoming someone else. You are already here, already whole, already worthy. And the more you return to yourself exactly as you are, the more life will begin to reflect that truth back to you, because authenticity is magnetic, not because it's impressive, but because it's real. Synchronicity, how the subconscious writes destiny. Jung believed in meaningful coincidence. Synchronicity, your subconscious beliefs shape the world around you. If you fear abandonment, you'll behave in ways that cause others to leave. Energy becomes your invisible architect. Carl Jung introduced a mysterious, beautiful concept into the world: synchronicity. He called it a meaningful coincidence, a connection between inner reality and outer events that defies logic, but feels deeply, undeniably true. It's when something you need shows up without asking. It's when a chance meeting feels like fate. It's when the world seems to echo the exact thing your soul was whispering. Jung believed that your subconscious doesn't just live inside you, it lives through you, it communicates in symbols, in dreams, in emotions, and in the events you encounter every day. You may think life is random, but your energy, your hidden beliefs, your emotional patterns, they are quietly shaping the script. If you carry fear of abandonment, you might become overly accommodating, silencing your needs to keep people close only to push them away with your silence. And when they leave, it confirms your fear. See? I'm not worth staying for, but it wasn't fate. It was the unconscious writing a familiar story. This is synchronicity's shadow, the way unhealed pain reappears again and again, not to punish you, but to be seen. The universe doesn't just hand you events, it mirrors your energy back to you, your relationships, your struggles, your successes, even your moments of peace. They are not isolated accidents. They are conversations between your soul and the world. And when your inner world changes, your outer world does too. Not by magic, but by meaning, by frequency, by alignment. Synchronicity isn't just about seeing angel numbers or hearing the right song at the right moment. It's deeper. It's a realization. Your life is not happening to you, it is happening through you. When you begin to value yourself, you'll be met with people who mirror that value. When you begin to heal, you'll notice that the chaos outside begins to quiet down. When your energy changes, life responds differently. Not because it suddenly became kinder, but because you did. This is the silent architecture of the soul. This is the deeper intelligence guiding your path. So next time something in your life feels like more than a coincidence, pause, reflect, ask, what is my soul trying to show me? Because synchronicity is not an accident. It is an invitation, an unfolding, a reminder that you are not separate from the story you are writing it. Self-worth is a spiritual responsibility. To value yourself is not selfish, it is spiritual maturity. When you fill your own cup, you overflow into the world. He who knows his shadow no longer fears the light, and he who has met himself becomes a light for others. To value yourself is not an act of ego. It is an act of awakening. It is not arrogance. It is alignment, because when you truly know your worth, you stop needing to prove it. You stop begging the world to see you because you finally see yourself. Carl Jung believed that self-worth wasn't just personal, it was spiritual. Why? Because a person who honors themselves doesn't take more than they need. They don't chase love or control others or seek validation through performance. Instead, they move through the world from fullness, not from lack. They speak with clarity, not with fear. They give without resentment. They say no without guilt. They rest without shame because they know their being is already enough. To value yourself is to become responsible for the energy you carry. It is to stop handing others the pen that writes your worth. It is to stop outsourcing your value to your job, your appearance, or your relationships. It's a shift from what do they think of me to what do I know about myself. And when you know yourself, when you've stood in the darkness of your shadow and not run, you no longer fear the light, because the light within you is now real. It's not a performance, it's not a mask, it's a steady flame, unshaken by who accepts you or who doesn't. And here's the beautiful paradox. The moment you begin to truly honor yourself, you become a mirror, you become a safe place for others, you become a guide, not by teaching but simply by being, because a person who knows their own worth becomes a permission slip for others to remember theirs. This is why self-worth is not selfish. It is sacred. It's the foundation of conscious relationships, healthy boundaries, and authentic living. You're not here to be small for others. You're here to expand, to awaken, to heal, and to remind others through your presence that it's safe to love themselves too. To value yourself is not indulgence. It is the beginning of everything real. As Jung said, he who looks inside awakens, and once awakened, your life becomes not just yours, but a light on the path for someone else. How life changes when you do: you stop settling, you stop silencing yourself, you stop shrinking, because now you know, I am worthy because I exist, and that changes everything. That's the beginning of a new life, when you begin to value yourself truly, quietly. Without condition, life begins to shift. You stop settling for almost love. You stop negotiating your boundaries for the comfort of others. You stop dimming your voice in rooms that don't know how to hear you, because now you know something sacred. I am worthy because I exist, not because of your productivity, not because of your perfection, but simply because you are, and from that knowing, your entire reality begins to rearrange. You no longer chase, you attract. You no longer perform, you simply show up. You no longer wait for permission, you become your own validation. Where you once tolerated disrespect, you now walk away calmly, without drama. Where you once overgave, hoping for scraps of appreciation, you now give from overflow or not at all. Where you once stayed silent to avoid conflict, you now speak not to argue, but to honor your truth. Your relationships begin to reflect your self-worth. Your standards rise not out of pride, but out of deep inner peace, because you know what you deserve, and more importantly, you're no longer afraid to lose what isn't meant for you. Suddenly, the noise that once consumed you feels distant. The people who misunderstood you begin to fade, and in their place, new energies arrive. People who see you, opportunities that align, moments that feel like coming home, because life doesn't change when circumstances shift. Life changes when you do, and the greatest shift is this: you no longer seek to be chosen, you choose yourself, and that changes everything. Ask yourself, which part of me must I let go? And which part do I want to reclaim? Your answers may open a door for you or for someone else. Life that flows with self-worth begins within.